Yeah, I mean, it's a massive blow. Virat Kohli missing any match for India, although in Indian conditions might not miss him as much as if this was a tour to England.
Yes.
It's going to be still a huge blow.
BazBall was an approach that talked about playing aggressive cricket, going for the win, and all those things. But sometimes we see that England batters try to play out of their skin to maintain that 5 to 7 runs per over run rate. And I'm not sure if a lot of Indians will agree on this, but I think this is England's best bet in recent years. And not just England, if you talk about Australia as well, any touring side, this is the best opportunity for them to win a series in India, not just a test match, but a series.
I think they might struggle against the Indian spin. I think the one good thing is, though, is that if they get any opportunity in any of these five test matches, they're going to take that opportunity. And that's been the criticism with some of the sides of the past decade that have toured India. And the big question mark has been, can they do it in India?
Hello and welcome back for a new episode of the Pavilion Perspective Special. And today I'm joined by Nikesh Rughani, who's a renowned sports journalist, commentator, and broadcaster in the United Kingdom. Nikesh has been a part of the BBC Sports team since many years, and he was also chosen as the Sports Journalist of the Year at the 10th Asian Media Awards in 2022. And let me tell you one thing, it wasn't easy getting him on the show because, as far as I remember, we've been in touch since the World Test Championship final. And after a lot of ifs and buts, here we are to talk about our favorite sport, cricket. And with that little intro, I would like to welcome you, Nikesh, on the podcast. And I would love to know how the English media and the fans are excited for this particular England's tour of India.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. I know it's been a little bit of a long time coming, but great to finally be talking to you. And yeah, you're right. It's a good time to be connecting because there's lots of excitement ahead of this England tour of India. 5 test matches, which is always great for the purists who love the traditional form of the game, of course. And look, in England, Test cricket is still number one. Yes, you've
Yes,
got things like the 100 now coming into things and everything like that. But when it comes to these clashes against Australia in the Ashes, of course, and tours to India and the likes of South Africa in particular, and maybe the West Indies, not so much now, but sort of India would be second in line to the Ashes in terms of an English cricket audience, even though England have had obviously a lack of success in recent tours to India. 2012, of course, was a great
yes.
tour for the England team with Monty Panesar, Graham Swan, Kevin Peterson, all those guys performing fabulously well. And that famous Mumbai Test match, of course, we all remember back then. It's been a bit of a hard road since then for England, but they're looking forward to it. They're playing this new brand of positive attacking cricket. You can call it BazBall, you can call it whatever you like. Ben Stokes seems to have, put his own stamp on things with how he wants his side to play Test cricket. It's been entertaining. It's not always been successful. On the whole, it has. There's been a few flaws in it, of course. And the big question mark has been, can they do it in India? Yes, they've gone and done it in Pakistan. They clean swept Pakistan 3-0 when they toured there under Ben Stokes. But India is a different ball game with the pitches, the Indian spinners, the quality of the side that they're going to come up against as well. It's going to be the toughest test yet. And we'll wait and see if it's BazBall or it's the same old England that turn up in India.
Well, I think, sir, I can see that optimism on your face, in your voice, that I think England has got a good opportunity to win a test series in India this time. And I'm not sure if a lot of Indians will agree on this. I don't think I'm on the same page as them, but I think this is England's best bet in recent years. And not just England, if you talk about Australia as well, any touring side, this is the best opportunity for them to win a series in India, not just a test match, but a series. And I'll tell you my reason later, but I would like to know your reason. Like you mentioned, BazBall as well. They clean swept Pakistan in Pakistan, and that's a big thing to win 3 games against the nation side and not let them win even a single game. So, what do you think has changed in the recent past, and how can England actually challenge India?
Well, I think first and foremost, look, for me, it's a stretch too far to think that England can win the series over 5 test matches in India against this Indian side. The reason being is that, look, BazBall and whatever you want to call it, this positive mindset that the England team have got depends a lot on them batting first and, making a big score on a good pitch before the pitch starts to deteriorate. Now, they're not always going to get that opportunity on Indian pitches, and I'm not saying they're going to rag from, ball one in the test match, although we have seen that before, of course, but not only are they not going to be amazingly good to bat on, they're not going to be roads like some of the surfaces we saw in Pakistan during that series. And, they have been criticised, the Pakistanis, for those types of pitches as well. They're not going to face those types of conditions, and they're not going to face that type of bowling. They're going to be facing two, at least, of the best spinners in world cricket, two of the greatest spinners that India have ever produced in Ashwin and Jadeja. And, Akshar Patel will come into the fold, I'm sure, as well. Kuldeep Yadav through the series, I'm sure, will perhaps have a role to play, depending on team combinations and injuries and things like that. So it doesn't matter even if one of those top guns gets injured. There's so much backup, so much quality behind them that I think they might struggle against the Indian spin. I think the one good thing is, though, is that if they get any opportunity in any of these 5 test matches, they're going to take that opportunity. And that's been the criticism with some of the sides of the past decade that have toured India, is that they've had those periods within test matches, those little mini sessions and things like that, where they've had those opportunities. I was in India for the Australia tour last February, almost a year ago. And Australia had so many opportunities during those first couple of test matches, in particular, when India took that 2-0 lead, to take the game by the scruff of the neck and almost, play India out of the test match. They could have put themselves in an unassailable winning position in both of those. But, just those little periods of play where they have a collapse or they're not able to capitalize on taking a couple of quick wickets, that has really hurt sides in the past. And I think this England side, with that positive mindset, they will be more likely to take those opportunities when they do present themselves. So it will be more competitive, I think, from an England point of view. Can they win the series? I don't think so. I think that's going to be a hurdle too far.
Well, like all the points of discussion that I have today, strangely, all of the points you've mentioned in your sort of monologue, and we'll be talking about them in detail in the coming minutes. But like you mentioned, you were there in India during the Australia tour, and you were there in India during the World Cup as well. And if you remember, I messaged you as well, if we could meet in Lucknow or Delhi, if you're coming there to cover a game. Unfortunately, we could not bring that to reality. And like if you talked about BazBall, okay, so that is the particular reason why I think that England has the best shot, because we know that we won't be getting 300 pitches very often in this particular series. And like if England bat first, they have the best opportunity because the pitch will be the best to bat first. And if they can get that 60-70 runs in the first 10 overs with that particular technique, and later if they can capitalize on that, I think they can reach 200 and 250, and that will be a winning total on Indian pitches. And that is the particular reason why I think England have the best shot. And my basic question about BazBall was that I think the notion of BazBall sometimes get overwhelmed because of all the media talks, because BazBall was an approach that talked about playing aggressive cricket, going for the win and all those things. But sometimes we see that England batters try to play out of their skin to maintain that 5 to 7 runs per over run rate. So what are your views on that? Does it get overwhelmed, or is it just my thought?
No, you're right. I mean, look, there's a lot of hype around the phrase. It's a particular mindset that they've decided this is how we want to play Test cricket. I don't know how much of it is to do with Ben Stokes thinking, I want to mark my name down in history as being the captain that revolutionized Test cricket, or anything like that. I think this is just the way he enjoys it. He wants the English public to get involved in, backing them, being excited about watching this Test team once again. And those are some of the reasons why they've decided that this approach is best. It obviously puts the opposition on the back foot. It's not an approach that most sides are used to facing in world cricket as well. So it's a bit of a shock when you first come up against this style of cricket and players batting in this particular way. I think sometimes, look, they do look really stupid when some of the dismissals that you see, during the first 2 or 3 Ashes Test matches as well, against Australia in the previous summer. It can look quite embarrassing at some stages, trying to maintain that run rate of 5 runs and over plus, like you mentioned. And some of the shots are just not needed for Test cricket. It's a 5-day game still, so you can approach it in whichever way you like. You don't want to approach it with the mindset that we need to finish it in 3 days, in 4 days. You've got to still have it in the back of your mind. This is a 5-day match. Yes, you want to play positively, but there are going to be periods which test you. This is Test cricket. It's the hardest form of cricket in the world, and you've got to be patient. You've got to have a little bit of the inner Pujara about you at times. You've got to take the hits. You've got to, work through those passages of play where the ball's new or the ball's spinning extra and the spinners are on top in a place like India. And you've got to, knuckle down, get through those tough passages of play. And then once, that happens, you build a little partnership. Yeah, you can go at 5 runs and over, 7 runs and over for those little periods. You don't need to maintain that throughout 100 odd overs of an innings, I don't feel. So they need to strike a balance, is what I'm saying. Yes, the approach is exciting. It can be good for Test cricket. It can be successful for the England team as well, but not if they just keep going gun-ho and not thinking about the other side of the game as well, which is to dig in and to, backs against the walls time, which you're going to face in Test cricket in India. You've got to get through those tough passages of play. So, can they strike that balance? That's the key question.
You talked about their shot selection, and that reminds me of Joe Root's reverse scoop to Pat Cummins in the Ashes. And like you said, you have to be a Pujara sometimes. And I think that balance has to be there in the team. Root is somebody who can play in all gears in Test cricket, and maybe he'll be the most crucial person on this particular tour. And before the start of the series, we've got a couple of bad news that Harry Brook won't be available for the whole tour, and Virat Kohli will miss the first couple of games. And for the English fans particularly, I think Harry Brook's unavailability is a big loss because he could be that X factor. He could be their Rishabh Pant if they need to change the course of the game in a matter of few overs. And like you talk about Joe Root and the short selection, I think Joe Root will be the crucial key for England to have a great tour in this particular year.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Joe Root is going to be the key for England in Test cricket still for another couple of years at least, if not more. Is the glue that holds this batting lineup together, because he is, one of the greatest batters of this generation, and one of the greatest batters that England had ever produced in all forms of cricket. Really, he's been successful in white ball as well, but in particular in Test cricket. So you're right. Look, somebody like a Root is going to have to think long and hard before he tries to reverse Jasprit Bumrah in the Test series that's coming up. There might be a time where it's possible to do that. Fine, but you got to pick your moments. You don't want to be looking stupid and getting dismissed early on, trying something that is risky and unnecessary at the time as well. Harry Brook, big blow. Although I will say one thing about Harry Brook, I've watched him a fair bit over the last year, 18 months, very closely indeed. He played in the IPL, of course, last time around for the Sunrisers, had a little bit of success, got 100 for them, and then really struggled post that 100. And I think he got found out.
10 games, I think, after that.
Yeah, he got found out, I think, a lot by the spinners.
Yeah.
So whether or not he would have been a massive difference in the series, I don't know. It's a different form of the game, of course. It's Test cricket. I think he would have been a very useful addition to that middle order, but I don't think it's a killer blow for England with Harry Brook missing out. They have got other players who can come in, who can play spin just as well, if not, a little bit better than Harry Brook. Of course, against the fast bowlers, he's brilliant. He's one of the most exciting talents in English cricket at the moment, in world cricket, really. He's just got to fine-tune some of his technical difficulties against spin, I think, and then the sky's the limit. So it's unfortunate. Look, he's missing out for personal reasons. All England fans wanted to see him out there because of the excitement that he brings, but I don't necessarily think it'd be a killer blow to them.
Well, the reason why I thought Harry Brook will be crucial for them because of the game against Afghanistan that they played in Delhi. It was a sluggish wicket, and he was the only batter that looked maybe threatening for Afghanistan. Maybe he could take that game away, but unfortunately he could not. But that was the contrasting difference that we saw in Harry Brook between IPL 2023 and the World Cup. And like you said, that Harry Brook is a prospect to look out for. And I was covering a game for World Cup in Lucknow. I met a few English fans, and like they also mentioned, like when I asked them who's your favorite player in England and who do they think is the great somebody to look forward in this World Cup and post the World Cup, it was Harry Brook, not Josh Butler, not Ben Stokes, not Joe Root, but they were clearly excited for Harry Brook. And like you mentioned about Joe Root being the greatest one of the greatest batters in England, and if he continues to play for a few more years, like 5 odd years, I think he can break the record of somebody whose jersey has been hanging behind your wall, Sachin Tendulkar.
Maybe. Which records are we talking about there? There's quite a few.
The number of
Most
matches
hundreds
and the
in
number
Test
of runs
cricket.
in Test cricket, only Test cricket, not ODI, not the other format, just Test cricket.
Yeah, potentially. Look, he's got age on his side. I think he's 33 now. Joe
Yeah,
Root, Sachin played till he was 40. I'm not saying Joe Root necessarily will play until he's 40, but he could play till his late 30s certainly. And the amount of Test cricket that England do play, um, you never know. And he's winding down in terms of white ball. He doesn't play T20 internationals anymore for England. And who knows how long he's going to take up ODI cricket as well. So it could happen. It could happen. And look, Harry Brook is one of those. It's early to talk about records and things like that. But you're right. He's a young man. He will improve. Those technical deficiencies that I've talked about against spin in spinning conditions. Yeah, we saw glimpses of that in the World Cup where he overcame some of that. Is he the finished article? No, but he will be a miss certainly in that middle order. But I don't think it's a killer blow. I think a lot does depend on Joe Root, like you say, but they're going to need the likes of Ben Stokes to play maturely alongside Joe Root on a tour of India. Stokes might come in at number 5. There might be 3 down for not very many. You can't afford to then start coming down the track to Bumrah and trying to hit him over long on into the stands immediately.
yeah.
You need to dig in, take your time, knock it around, plenty of gaps, just keep things ticking. There's other ways of playing BazBall as well, aren't there? You can
Yes,
get
of
5
course.
runs and over with 5 singles. You don't
Yeah.
need to hit a boundary every over. So even if you want to maintain that tempo and keep that scoreboard ticking at that certain rate, you don't necessarily need to do it in boundaries. Definitely not in India as well, with the big open gaps, and the field will be spread with the spinners in the attack. Yes, there'll be close catches, but there'll be wide open gaps as well. Play sensibly, knock it around. So they're going to need a lot of support for Joe Root in that middle order. Bairstow will probably be quite crucial in there. Will Ben Foakes play as the wicketkeeper batter? We think that might happen, given what happened at practice earlier today, I'm told, with Ben Foakes taking the gloves and Johnny Bairstow doing fielding practice with the rest of the England team as well. So it looks as though Foakes will probably keep wicket. He's a youthful batter. He's probably the most un-BazBall player
Yes.
in that lineup as well. So he might provide a bit of solidity there at number 7 or number 8 whenever he comes in. So as long as they can get that balance right in terms of attacking, keeping the scoreboard ticking, and playing sensibly enough, then they've got half a chance.
And I think we need to jump to Indian cricket as well, because the viewers, my viewers particularly, will be excited to listen about India as well, of course. But before moving to India, I would like to know the particular story behind why you've got the Sachin Tendulkar's jersey on your wall. I think it's a personal question, but if you don't mind, you can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, he's my idol. Like he is many cricket fans across the world. Indian cricket is my first love, and always will be. And Sachin was the guy I grew up watching, wanting to be like, wanting to play like. And I've been lucky enough to meet him on several occasions, do interviews with him and things. And he's just an absolute gentleman whenever you meet him. I've lucky enough to spend some good in-depth quality time with him as well around a couple of those interviews, particularly when he launched his book in London in 2014, November it was. And he's just such a humble guy. And, for me, the most technically gifted, most awesome batter of all time. And everyone's got their favorites. And I'm not necessarily saying he's the best of all time, but to me, he's my favorite of all time. And jersey proudly hanging behind me, signed. I'm lucky enough to have a signed copy of the book as
Yeah.
well from the book launch.
Okay.
Just blessed, and it was a long time coming. I never got to meet him while he was still an active cricketer. It was only since post-retirement, sort of after 2013-14. But every time we have interacted, it's been fantastic. And he's how can you not love Sachin, right?
Everybody loves Sachin. I don't think there's a single soul on the earth who doesn't like really Sachin Tendulkar. And I think we are here connecting dots, like we first talked about Joe Root, then we talked about Sachin Tendulkar, maybe Joe Root breaking Tendulkar's record. And now to connect another dot, I'll be talking about Virat Kohli, somebody who broke Tendulkar's record recently in ODIs. But to talk about Virat Kohli, it's unfortunate for India that he'll be missing the first couple of games due to personal reasons, of course. And we don't know that unavailability can be stretched to third, fourth, or fifth game. We don't know the reason, right? But I think for India, it's a big blow. But to look at the other side of this story, I think India will find themselves in a dilemma once Virat Kohli returns, because Shreyas Iyer will play instead of Virat Kohli now, with Rahul at 5 and Bharat at 6. I think India will find themselves in a huge dilemma, because I have a gut feeling. I'm optimistic about Shreyas Iyer performing great against England, because he's a great player of spin. And if he can tackle Mark Wood and Anderson, the gun pacers of England, then I think he can have a blast of a series. And of course, KL Rahul, who scored 100 in South Africa recently. And I think that's a dilemma that India will find themselves in once Virat Kohli returns. But what are your thoughts on Virat Kohli missing and the substitute that he'll be replacing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive blow. Virat Kohli missing any match for India, and I know he and Rohit Sharma have missed some matches in recent times, in recent years, but it's usually been white ball series, which have been quite meaningless, and not necessarily in the run up to a tournament. So a series like this, of course, 5 Test matches against England, to miss 2 of them, massive blow. We obviously don't know the specific reasons behind it, and we hope everything is okay, and we wish Virat Kohli well, as we do Harry Brook, of course, as well, missing out for personal reasons. And we hope everything is back on track, and they're both fighting fit and playing soon. And in Virat's case, we hope he's back by the 3rd Test in Rajkot, because India, although in Indian conditions, might not miss him as much as if this was a tour to England.
Yes.
It's going to be still a huge blow, because, as you say, Shreyas Iyer comes in, and Iyer, a brilliant player of spin. I'm not so concerned about him against somebody like Anderson in Indian conditions. However, against somebody like a Mark Wood and the short delivery, which Iyer has been working on and has improved a little bit against that short pace bowling, but Mark Wood is of extreme pace, and he can ruffle a few feathers of the best batters at short pitch bowling in the world, let alone somebody who's struggled in the past as well. That could be a slight concern. It's a very different approach from India, isn't it? Because you're going to have Rohit Sharma and Jaiswal opening the batting, Shubman Gill at number 3. We've gone like 2 generations at least 2 generations since we've had a number 3 who looks like he's going to be a regular number 3 in Test cricket, who's not of the mould of somebody like a Rahul Dravid or a Cheteshwar Pujara, because they both almost came back to back. And that's going to be interesting. I think that'll be a positive move, certainly in Indian conditions.
So it will be interesting to see how Gill performs. And in the bowling department, you mentioned once that India's got a great arsenal of bowlers with Ravichandran Ashwin, Jadeja, Akshar Patel, and Kuldeep Yadav. But I think injustice has been served to Washington Sundar, because he had a phenomenal series against England the last time England toured India, but he's been off the radar since then.
Yeah, and Washington Sundar gives you so much more with the bat as well.
Yeah.
And you could argue that he's certainly a better bat than somebody like Ashwin in terms of his talent and capability. Yeah. Almost at the level of somebody like a Jadeja, really. So he can potentially bat in that top 6, but definitely top 7, and offers you enough with the ball to be able to take crucial wickets. And he's got that sort of fighter's mentality about him, which I really love. He's an all-action kind of cricketer. He's not loud, out in the field. You won't hear a lot from him necessarily. He just quietly goes about his business. But when he's in action, when he's bowling, when he's batting, when he's getting those balls in the field as well, 100% effort from him, and lots and lots of quality as well. You're right. Look, he was one of those who came into the Test side down in Australia in that famous series in 2021, and played against England subsequently a few months later, and performed really well, and has really found himself on the outskirts of the team and the squad in recent times, a few sporadic appearances in various forms of cricket over the last couple of years, but nothing substantial. I think it's a good problem to have, when you've got so much quality, so many quality spinners, and not just
Yeah.
spinners, but spinning all rounders as well. It's difficult sometimes to fit all these guys into a team and into a squad. Hopefully, he gets his opportunity one day, and when he does, I'm sure he won't let anybody down. But I think, yeah, you're right. They're going to have some depth to their squad through this series as well, because inevitably there will be, hopefully there's not, but you'd think there'd be at least one injury, or one spinner might need a rest because they
Yeah.
might have bowled 50, 70 overs
Yeah.
in one of the games in a short space of time, and things like that. But they are going to have to rotate a lot between the spinners through those tests as well, because I can't see India going in with any more than two quicks. Can you? Probably Bumrah, Siraj, maybe.
Brian Siraj,
Shami's
yeah.
not available.
Shami is not available. And I think it's a bit sarcastic take, but like I said, England have the best chance of winning a series in India. But still, I feel no Indian spinner would need to bowl 50 or 60 overs in any innings or in a match to bundle England out. It will be India's series,
You never know.
and
You never know. I mean, they're playing one match in Rajkot, so you never know.
yeah,
Rajkot
but
can be a bit of a highway, but maybe they'll build a dirt track next to the highway this time.
of course,
Who
in
knows?
2016, when the game was happening in Rajkot, I think Root and Moeen Ali, a lot of players scored 100, and it was a draw game, if I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
and if you talk about England spinners, they've got Jack Leach. He was there in India last time as well, and to accompany him, they've got three spinners. Of course, Shoaib Bashir is struggling with his visa issues, if I'm not wrong, but I think Rehan Ahmed will accompany him. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, Shoaib Bashir, I've seen very little of him in action, but what little I have seen, there's lots of potential there. Leach, we know what we're going to get. He's useful in these types of conditions. Sort of doesn't quite fire it in the same way as somebody like a Jadeja would. Bowls a little bit slower pace, but variations are generally based on pace with him and
Yes,
flight. There's no real actual variations in the spin, or he doesn't have a doosra or anything like
yeah,
that going for him. So he will be useful in these conditions. Rehan Ahmed is such an exciting cricketer. He plays for Leicestershire, which is my local club, my local county, and I've watched his journey since before he played for England. He obviously starred in the Under-19s World Cup for England. He bowls a brilliant googly. His idol is Shane Warne. He, I think, spent a little bit of time with Shane Warne when he was
yeah,
much younger, in the MCC nets at Lords one time, and really idolizes him and models himself on him. So he's very aggressive in the way that he bowls. Looks to take a wicket almost every ball. He's very young though, and he's not got the level of experience perhaps required to lead an attack in Indian conditions, but he's certainly got the potential to be able to do that one day. And the thing that excites me about him as well is not only does he turn the ball big both ways, he's a very quick learner. So he might have a test match where he's tried too many googlies, or things haven't quite been working. He will analyze that with the coaches. He'll be very keen to learn what went wrong and try and put it right immediately. He's not one of those who just sits back and thinks, well, I'll believe the hype. I'll believe all these people saying that I'm so talented that things are, just going to work out. He'll constantly be working on his game to improve every single day, which I think is key for any young cricketer. And he's a brilliant prospect with the bat as well. We've seen in white ball cricket domestically in the 100 and in a couple of franchise competitions as well that he can bat in that top six and he can score runs and he can hit the ball big. And I expect him not to bat in the top six for England, but he will provide, if he plays, some useful runs down the back end of the order as well. Because you talk about BazBall. I mean, if there was a young player that BazBall was invented for, it's somebody like a Rehan Ahmed who just comes out, looks to attack every ball when he's batting. He's been used to batting down the order in domestic cricket early on in his career, so sort of number 9, 10, 11. But he's gradually been promoted up the order when some of his scores have been racking up, and those big sixes have been being hit as well. So he's an exciting cricketer, and he's one to keep an eye on. And I know it's Test cricket, but he does well in this series. Takes a few wickets, hits a few big sixes, then it won't be long before he gets a massive IPL deal as well.
okay. Of course, IPL puts you in the limelight straight away. and you're the big talking point as soon as you get an IPL contract and perform well, even in a single match. But I don't think we have a lot of time to talk about England's struggle in white ball cricket, or of course, I had another question regarding leg spinners in Test cricket, but we don't have a lot of time. I think we had a phenomenal conversation, and just time just flew away. And it was great to have you, Nikesh, on the show. And I just hope that people like here in India, and of course, if you could share it in UK as well, maybe we'll get a bit reach in UK as well.
Sure thing. Pleasure to speak to you, and take care, and fingers crossed for India in the series.
Of course, I think India will win the series 3-1. If you could make a scoreline prediction in the end.
4-1. Let's go
Oh,
4-1. I don't think there'll be any draws.
okay. I think if we get to see a particular flat track like we had in Chennai in the last series, or Rajkot in the previous series, then maybe we can have a draw like we had against Australia in Ahmedabad last year. So I think one draw is sort of inevitable. But if that does not happen, of course, 4-1. I would agree on that.
Excellent. Good stuff.
So with that, we'll just wrap this up. And thank you for joining us. See you in the next episode.